Hello and welcome to Profiles with Paulette Payne. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'm your host, Paulette Payne. As we all know, the global pandemic has caused many of us to start new and exciting adventures like this show, spend needed quality time with family, take on home projects, or simply just be. Well, for my guest tonight, it's proven to be an opportunity for her to create an entire album, which I'm sure was no small feat. But before we get to my guest tonight, just a little backstory about Profiles. So it is a virtual iteration of an in-studio taping I did 8 years ago. And of course, a continuation of projects that I did this year around the COVID-19 pandemic and police brutality and systemic racism in America. Profiles has always had the goal of informing, inspiring, and empowering viewers. And I hope you walk away with one of these, if not all of them, each Saturday as you tune in. I'm trying to stay on script because this is a good script, y'all. So with that, please take an opportunity to like this page if you haven't already, share the broadcast because, I bring wonderful guests each weekend, and I just hope that they speak to your heart, speak to your soul, and make you, think something differently or how better you can apply their teachings, if you will, to your life. So certainly share the broadcast, like the page, and tune in each Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. You can chime in at any time during the broadcast, leave your comments, and we'll get to them as soon as possible. And if we can't get to them during the live broadcast, we'll certainly check back on the back end. So without further ado, y'all, I'm just so excited to bring this amazing and uber talented producer, director, and creator of all things beautiful. She has a following like no other. She creates engagement on her page that's funny, that's inspiring, that's thought-provoking. And tonight she's here to talk to us about her freshman album, Shine. Y'all, without further ado, please welcome Miss Heather Godell Parker. Heather, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining tonight, Heather.
What an introduction. Let's talk about Paulette and how fabulous she is.
No, this is not about me. This is about you. How are you, Heather?
Thank you so much for having me. I am just so excited. And I've known you for years. And so I'm just excited to just chat with you and hang out, if anything,
It's been far too long.
It has.
Well, Heather, I like to have my guests just share a little backstory about who they are before we get into the questions, because I think it's really important. We're talking about an album, of course, but we want to know the person behind the album. So just tell us a little bit about Heather Godell Parker. How did you get here? What's your journey been like?
Oh gosh, I think it's been quite the journey. I'm originally from California. And that's where I was raised, and I lived there until I was in my 20s. I worked heavily in the music industry in my my early 20s. I was in a few different girl groups. When I was in high school, that's when I really started to explore writing, and I took piano for quite a long time, but I really got into writing actually from all the rappers in school. They would sort of steal me, and I became the girl that sang all the hooks and whatnot. So I would be in the studio with a lot of these guys, and they would really encourage me to write, and I would always say, I don't spit, I'm a lady. And they would just be like, oh, and so, I really, I got excited about writing in the studio, and I would sort of, sorry, mom and dad, but I'd sort of sneak out of school and find myself in studios and writing with rappers and whatnot. And I just had these big dreams. California is notorious for big dreamers. Everyone's always doing something. There's always people that are trying to make it big. And so that was sort of my ambition. And actually, through this album, I was able to reconnect with one of the first producers that I had ever worked with. when I was 16 years old. And now he's a dad, he works in church, and now I'm a mom and whatnot. But it was so fun to reconnect with him. His name is Aitwa. He's Nigerian, and he is a music minister in a Nigerian congregation. Anyways, he has been a big part of this project as well, and we've been able to work virtually. You know, throughout that journey with trying to sort of make it, if you will, in the industry, I did go through a period where I really lost myself. And in that losing myself, I learned exactly what I didn't want. And I saw through other people where my life could potentially end up. And it was not necessarily the route that I was going wasn't going to be a good fit for me. I didn't see that being a good fit. I was still singing in church at the time. I was singing in a choir, the SUV choir, which I know you from.
Yeah.
And I made a distinct decision, and that decision was very much influenced by some of my friendships in that choir to continue to stay in church. And I made a decision at that point that one of my greater focus in life was to find a companion and to become a mother. Those were just two very important. The family was just something that was very important to me. And so I made a very conscious decision to walk away from what I had been working for in Hollywood, and I set out to sort of, you could say at that point, I was saved, and I met my husband at BYU. I still was writing and I still was singing, but a lot of my writing and singing changed in that time because I was married. So I was like, well, I'm not going to write about like people cheating on me, which is like a big topic, right? I'm not going to write like love songs anymore because I don't know, what do you write about anymore? So I was kind of in a funk. My husband was at BYU and he was an accounting major, and I worked at Target and I just supported him through school, and he was a Georgia boy. He's from Georgia. My husband, just a little bit about him, he is half Black, half Samoan, and his family was living in Atlanta. So when he finished school, he took a job in Atlanta, and I still had ambitions to do more music. And most of my network was still in Utah and California. And I kicked and screamed the whole way to Atlanta. And I was just like, what am I going to do in Atlanta? Like, how am I going to network, how am I going to meet people? And so I definitely was in this sort of standstill era. And my husband was working. I had my first child. And at that point, I received a phone call from a good friend of mine who was the director of the SUV choir. And she asked me to help her find some members to be in her choir. So I went out looking for members, and Paulette, you were one of those singers that I went out and I found. And I was looking for accompanist, which is where I found Xavier, who is also another producer that's featured on the album. And it was from that point that I started to really be able to meet people in gospel music and in church music. And also a little bit about me. My mom is from the South. My mom is, she grew up Methodist, and my grandfather is a Methodist minister. And so Southern culture was something that was very comfortable for me. I always grew up on gospel music, and it was something that was like really deep within my heart. So throughout that process of being a mom, trying to help build a choir and living in the South, I acquired a lot of skills that I didn't realize that I had. I started producing, I started writing again, and I started to realize that there was like this really big world for me. And there were so many great musicians. There was so much great music out there that was like the perfect fit for me. That was the perfect fit for a mom, for a family, for someone that believed in God, that, you know, the quality of your music didn't have to go out the back door just because you were saved, or just because you were a mom, or you were married, you know. And so from there, I really just started to get back into my artistry and back into music, and that building up the choir and helping take part in that started to open doors for me as well. And eventually it led me to where I am now, where, you know, I never really thought that at, you know, in my 30s, we'll say in my 30s, because I'm not going to tell you my age.
Of course.
I mean, in my 20s, right? I did my first full scale producer deal, which was really exciting. And so that sort of led me to here. And I really just wanted to create good music that, like, moms and families like me would really like and enjoy, and that we wouldn't go cuckoo listening to 500 times, because we all know that our kids, you know, they don't just play a song one time, they play it 500 times. So we've got to like it too. And so so that kind of led me to where I am now.
So Heather, I heard a couple of things in your introduction of yourself. One, faith is the thread that kind of tied every experience that you've had up to this point. And you know, it's really amazing how how the Lord allows us to have these experiences, and he leads us to places, unknown places, foreign places sometimes, and we don't know what the end is going to be. We just have to we just have to go, you know, and sometimes we do go kicking and screaming, but we see that on the other side of that, there's so much richness, so much goodness, so many blessings, and it's abundance, you know. So you were talking about, you know, life in California, life in Georgia, the connections that you've been able to make. And now here we are talking about Shine, the album. Who's your target audience for this album, and why did you call it Shine?
Thanks for that question. My target audience, my personal target audience, are multicultural, family-based, multicultural, faith-based families. I grew up in a faith that was not necessarily catered to my family. I'm Native American. You know, I don't know that there's necessarily any faith that caters, I guess, to Native Americans, right? But I really wanted children to be able to see themselves in these songs. I wanted them to be able to see themselves on the front of the cover, because it was something that I didn't see very much of growing up, and I would outsource a lot of that. So even when it came to, because again, I grew up in a conservative faith, with that conservative, what's the word, culture, there were things like doing runs with your voice, that was unacceptable, right? Like, we were taught not necessarily to shout and say amen and praise the Lord, but that was in me. And it was something that I couldn't really contain. With my experience in the choir, I learned that was okay, and it became a safe place for me. And I looked around, and it was like, not only that, I wasn't the only one feeling that way. And it sort of ignited a fire in me that I really wanted to be able to give back to those communities. And I wanted the multicultural family to be able to identify with something, with some of these like basic hymns, these basic songs, and sort of put it in and fuse it with music that was really familiar to their home, and music that, you know, a lot of natives and Africans, I mean, almost any indigenous group, you could say, it's like we're born with a beat inside of us. you know, we're born with that rhythm inside of us. And in my mind, in Heather's theory, it's if he gave us that rhythm, then we need to be praising him with it. You know, we need to be utilizing it for his glory. That's why he gave it to us. And so that was really important to me. And so that is my target audience. It is for everybody. It is for obviously not just the minority, not just the multicultural, but you'll find that a lot of the cast, a lot of the production, we've got an African song on there, we've got blues on there, we have some reggae on there, that all of those elements come from my upbringing and from what's going on in my home as well, with my husband being Samoan and African and or African American and me being Native American. All of those elements are definitely reflected in the music that I created. And my hope was that it would attract that audience as well.
You know, it's the drum, the beat of the drum, you know, and from my ancestral heritage, it's the beat of the African drum that for many, you know, it was a cry for help. It was an empowering type of sound that brought the community together, that many times was a signal to protest, for uprisings, for freedom. And so I can relate to you about that rhythm, that beat. And of course, if he puts it in us, we have to use it. And what I can appreciate about this album, Heather, there is something for everyone. And children, of course, when they listen to it, and even and their parents, even when they listen to it, they are able to experience the move of the spirit in a different way, in a way that they haven't felt it before. And that's powerful. That's powerful. Tell us why you called the album Shine.
Well, we went back and forth, and when I talked with the label, and one of the possibilities for the name of the album was going to be Hello Jello, and I sort of went with that forever. I knew that the thread of the album was going to be based off of primary hymns, and that we wanted to revamp some of these, make them cool and hip and fresh and fun. And so we looked at different names like, you know, Sister Parker's Primary and things like that. And I went back to the song that I wrote, which is the single on the album. And I was just listening to it, and I was writing the words, and Shine just stuck out to me. I really wanted a powerful statement. I wanted something universal. I wanted something that instantly spread joy. That was just like a one word. You could just sort of get it, you know? And so I sent off a few to the label, a few examples of like what I could see the logo being and all these different things. And then everything after that, once we had the name, then we could start to sort of really develop the music around it. And so that's why we decided to go with Shine.
And, you know, the album cover is amazing. I love the colors. I love the engagement of the children. It's just, it's fun. It sparks joy. It sparks enthusiasm. And it certainly sparks shine.
Okay, yeah. It was, I really wanted to include as many, and the cover, my husband was so sweet. He spent so much time getting this on our TV back there.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to showcase, you know, as many ethnicities as I could. I had a little bit of a timeline, but I also have relationships with all of these children, and they are each amazing in their own way. And I just thought, what a dream, like that I could get these kids that I actually know personally and put them on the front of an album cover. This young boy right here, Abe, he's the rapper on Shine. And we have all kinds of ethnicities. We've got, you know, this is a little, he's half Samoan, half Tongan. And that was really important for me, that I represent, you know, the Polynesian community on the front. Because I don't know that I ever saw a Polynesian kid on the front of a cover. at Deseret. And so I just thought that would be really neat. And then, I got to put my son on there too. And then if you open up the cover, my other little son, he's on the inside too. So it was fun. These kids are amazing, and they're all Georgia kids. So
Georgia born.
You may see them walking around if you live in Georgia.
Georgia raised. I want to clarify just a little. Well, first, in all transparency, Tara, I am so sorry. Heather and I go to the same church, and so I want to make sure some of the language that you may hear may be a little foreign to you. So she mentioned primary hymns. Primary, of course, is children's church, if you will. Right. And children's church has its own set of songs. So she recreated some of those songs to the beats and the rhythms of blues and hip hop and, all these genres. So that's what she means by primary hymns. Heather, we have a question from the audience. How has making this album assisted your family's faith during this pandemic?
Well, oh gosh. How has it assisted our family's faith? I remember sitting down with my husband and telling him that his job didn't require faith, but that my job required 100% faith, because there was going to be no way that I could get it done in the middle of a pandemic on my own. I just felt like it was against all odds. And so we definitely found ourselves on our knees, because I was just so broken. Just originally the album was supposed to be due, I believe in May. And then the pandemic hit and I couldn't do anything. And not only that, there was probably 10 songs that I ended up cutting and having to redo that were intended for gospel choirs. But there was no way to get a gospel choir together. And the way that it's set up, you have to get approval for songs. And so I was just desperate, a lot of these songs that I just was really broken, and it required faith. It wasn't like, oh, well, I think I'll ask. It was like, no, I have to ask, because there's not going to be any way that I can do this on my own. Somehow, in some way, and of course, at the very last moment, all the time, it was like the Lord just came through. And I just had countless experiences with the music and with the way that things went, where sometimes I had to get rid of a song that I really loved, but it just didn't feel right. And it was like, I can keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and taking it to the Lord and saying, but I really want to do this. I really want to do this. And it just wasn't working out. Or I could rely on him and let him just give me the songs. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that meant forget the drums, forget the extras, forget the bells and whistles, and go back to what's simple and do what I gave you to do what you know how to do. And so in those times, I think that really increased my faith in the Lord. I think that it also caused me to cling to my husband, because he was the one that sort of knew how much I wrestled with so many things, even when it came to choosing which singers to bring on and deciding which songs would be cut and which songs we would move forward in, and which pianist to use and whatnot. It really strengthened our marriage, because he did start to see that in order for this to work, I was going to have to rely on the Lord. There was just not going to be any other way to do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's interesting hearing that, and hearing what you just said, and then at the intro you talked about how you had to uproot and move, and you did mm-hmm. it, and you kind of murmured about it, and how the Lord just worked everything out. And even now in the middle of a pandemic, I'm sure it was cause for murmur at some point, but you had to rest in your faith and lean on your husband, and voila, this amazing project was produced. And Heather, it's so awesome that these young children who have never, more than likely, except for your sons, ever produced a song, produced an album, and the experiences that you have allowed them to have by being part of this project is amazing. These are memories they will take into their lives forever, and lessons that they'll take. And who knows, some of them might be on the show in a few years if I'm not too wrinkled and aged.
That is flawless. So I haven't seen you age at all in all the time that I know you. So we ain't worried about
that. Not at all. Not at all. But look, Heather, let's talk about your favorite songs. You mentioned some you had to pull, but based on the album as it is, what are some of your favorite songs off of it?
Oh, gosh. Well, first of all, let me say there were songs that I liked that we ended up having to pull, but it really came down to I'm not going to put out anything that I don't 100% love. If I didn't absolutely love it, I would have gone to the label and said, because, I had to get so many songs done in my contract. And so I would have just said, I only have this many because I won't put out anything I don't love. But what has become my favorite, I think, on the album, I really love The Wise Men, Foolish Men. I just think, like, in my wildest dream, I would just love to hear it on the radio. And what told me that it was so good was I had some background singers come in the studio and we turned it on and all of them started dancing. And one of them popped up, Dravius, and he's the lead singer on Hello, Hello. And he said, I gotta hop on this. Oh, yes. And he just got it. And it was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love the beat. Miles, who was a superstar on the project, I would have not been able to do a thing without him. He helped me create the track. He himself was in a little bit of a rut because of the pandemic, and so was I. And so we sort of came together and we're like, we'll be in the rut together. And I remember him telling his roommate, watch, we'll make a song today. We're going to make it in one day. Now, Wise Men, Foolish Men originally was not on my list of songs to produce, but I can't remember why. I think that I may have just been scrolling through the primary hymn book. I have it right here, actually. I left this out on my piano. This is the one that I was sort of raised on. And I think I just opened up to it and I thought, God, The Wise Men, Foolish Men, it'd be really fun if we could do something cool with that. And I know what happened. So I kind of had that sitting in my mind. I was driving on my way to the studio and I think Despacito came up and I was just trying to be inspired. I was looking for inspiration. I'm like, yeah, we need something with kind of a groove like this. And I sent it to Miles and I'm like, we need a song that has these sort of drums in it because they're more, the texture of the drums aren't like a 808. They're not like a beat. It has more of like an ethnic sound to them. And it sort of fuses with these like deep tones. And so I showed up at the studio. We scrolled through a bunch of different sounds and we created it in 15 minutes.
Wow.
And it just like happened. And then, and so then when I had the background singers come in and Dravius wanted to jump on it and he just started dancing, it was just like, oh, I love this song. So I love Wise Men, Foolish Men. I feel like I could hear it in a club, a wholesome Christian club, right? At a dance, I could hear it at a dance. We'll call it a dance. And I've been listening to Spiritual Gifts lately too, which again, it has that reggae vibe. It just is something new. Lyrically, I hope people appreciate the lyrics because they really come from my heart. And I like that one too because the topic, I don't know, I kind of thought that it was really funny. I thought, well, I've never heard a song about spiritual gifts. Who's going to write a song about spiritual gifts? So I thought, well, I'm going to try and write one. And I wrote one and it ended up being amazing. And it was another one of those things. That was the first song that me and Miles did together. And I went into the studio, and that one we finished in 15 minutes. It was like he just led that one right away, and it was like, oh, that one's done, you know? So I think those two are probably my favorite.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love Shine. You know, I love I just, I love the way you sing it. I love the extra bells and whistles. That's my favorite one. So,
Oh, thank you. The thing about Shine was that I actually wrote that. So my sister used to live in Hawaii. I went and visited her in Hawaii, and she said, oh, you got to meet these girls. These girls are amazing singers. And we had brought an engineer out there because we were going to record some family songs. And so she said, you got to meet these girls. You got to meet them. And so they're the Tonga sisters. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay. We were at a church building, and they came in, and I wasn't really doing anything. We were just sort of twiddling our thumbs. And I just started to freestyle. So Shine was actually a freestyle. And we said, hey, just sing this. And nothing ever really became of the song. We just sort of sat on it for 2 or 3 years. But I held on to their vocals my engineer had saved their vocals in his files. And so then I came out here to Atlanta. We added some more to it. I felt like there needed to be a rap verse in there. I just felt like that's what it called for. Mm-hmm. And then I called the girls, I called their mom up, Sia, and I said, can I please keep their voices on this song? Because they're sort of like the originals. And they are like, so like, since then they've been on Ellen, they've been on like Nickelodeon and all this stuff. So I'm like, can I please keep their voices? It would be so awesome. And she said, yeah, you can keep their voices. She was so sweet about it. And so I was able to retain their voices and mix it with what we had sort of done. And that became what it was.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song. I love it. And I find myself humming it and singing it and just bouncing. You know, it's that kind of song. It's that kind of song.
Well, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Heather, I heard something that you said about, you know, you started writing these songs. You just got into this writing phase. You know, your story is just so inspiring in that. And I go back to California and what you did there and how you were in the studio and these rappers said, you know, go on and write some lines, go on and do this, you know, do this, write. And now you've written and it's in the form of this album. And it's just amazing how each experience that we have in our life prepares us for the next experience. And you have to have the eyes to see it, the ears to hear it, and the desire to pursue it. And it's beautiful to see how these dots are connecting in your journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so true.
Welcome. Yeah, for sure. So you talked about how the album is, you know, it's geared towards multicultural families, minority families, but of course everybody. But I want to extract this piece about minority families, multicultural families, ethnicity. Of course, you know, the country is still reeling from the murder of George Floyd, and of course, just systemic racism in America. And you know, I follow your Instagram feed, and I noticed that you know you and your family were heavily involved in the protests in Atlanta. Talk to us a little bit about why that was important for you, and more specifically, why it was important for you to involve your children in that experience.
Well, I think for us, it's just as important as being involved in these sort of matters are just as important to us as being Christians, you know. It really, to see those around us hurting, to actually experience it ourselves as well. It's important for us to not just tell our kids things, but to create experiences for them, to create pause for thought for them, to help them critically think. And we are big believers in, if you know where you came from, if you know the struggles that people have gone through to get you where you are, you're going to live differently. You're going to look at people differently. You're going to love differently and see the good in people. And you're going to mourn with those that mourn and comfort those in need of comfort. And for us and for our family, you know, my dad came off a reservation. My mom came from a Native community. There's a lot that I know that they grew up, a lot of hardships that they saw. They were able to afford us a nice life. I grew up in suburbia. My husband's mom came from Samoa, and his dad came from Atlanta. And then being a biracial couple, they've experienced, you know, so many different things, especially, gosh, I think to be a biracial couple in the South and in the 70s and 80s, that wasn't easy. And I feel like as I've looked at my parents and as I've looked at a lot of our generation that had parents, I feel like perhaps that generation was quiet about things. And the way to, and part of that I think was survival. I think the other part of that was they just wanted to be respected. They just wanted to be left alone. They just wanted to be considered as equals. And I don't know, and I think part of that was like, if you think something's wrong, just don't speak out about it. Don't create a problem, right? Mm-hmm. And I think our generation is more of, well, no, that's not right. I'm going to actually say something because nothing's going to change unless I say something, you know. And we're all about it. And we're all about supporting our communities, uplifting our communities, trying to do good by them. And we want our kids to do the same. It's very important to me that I look to my community and I try to uplift them as much as I can, you know, and I would hope that they would do the same for our family. We've had mentors that have gone before us as well, that have helped us, that have paved the way for us to be where we are. Not like we're anywhere fabulous or great, but anywhere that we are, we definitely we were brought there by people. So in our community, that's important for us.
Yeah. And I'm sure your sons have their own special takeaways, you know, exposing young people, children, they're so impressionable, you know, and the things that run through their little minds, sometimes we're not privy to because they're not ready to discuss it. But the things that I've heard, you know, I taught in primary, and to hear those children talk, you know, and express themselves, you wonder, gosh, how did you know that? You know, where did you learn that from? Just these profound ideas that they're able to piece together. And I'm sure, you know, your sons have had some conversations with you about that experience. And it's really important and quite commendable to you and your husband that you've exposed them to that experience, because it's a lived experience for so many people, you know, myself included.
Right.
So that's awesome that they had a chance to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, my husband was like, I was wrapping up my album and the riots were right around the corner from us. A lot of the, because we were out in like Buckheadish area, and a lot of those buildings, I mean, it was just getting really intense in the area. And I was wrapping up the album. My husband was out there with the boys protesting every day, and 2-3 protests a day, you know, and I kind of chuckle because, you know, my boys, they would say, well, what protest are we going to today? You know, I remember going to another protest, and my boys would hand out waters. You know, of course we wanted to protect them with COVID and everything. So we brought our masks and whatnot. And we, a lot of the time, that is what they did. They handed out waters to a lot of the protesters. And I really commend my husband for doing that, because that's very important. And he has said, you know, I'd like to believe that I would have been one of the people that was marching with Martin Luther King when during the civil rights and this sort of era. And I would like to believe that I would have been on that side of history. And so for us, that was part of that motive as well. What part of history, what side of history do we want to be on? So
Yep. How do you want to be remembered? That's part of that story. How do you want to be remembered? What impact do you want your life to have had at the end of the day? Yep. Good
so
stuff.
this is sound crazy, but I found myself in tears. My dad can testify to this because he came to see us during when the pandemic started. And I was crying and crying, and I was so worried that if I got COVID and I died, that I would have all this music left in me that I couldn't leave the world.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's my ministry, and I have this sign that I put on my fridge for the days that I wanted to give up on the music and just have it done with, just not do a good job, just do it okay. I have a sign up that says, you're making something that will outlast your lifetime. And so do it good, do a good job, because this is music that it's in the universe, right? And in 20, 30 years, it's still going to be there. The messages, the sentiments, the phrases, that is what the Lord gave me. And I look at it as my ministry and what I'm obligated to leave this world. I think one of my biggest fears is that if I get to the other side, that I would have to say, I'm sorry I didn't finish, or I'm sorry that I didn't do my best job, or I've always felt this great responsibility to my music, I guess, almost like a pressure, and I still feel that way because I have more songs with more
Right.
testimony in them that I would love to share. But I just remember feeling so worried about that. And that, I think, is what I want to be remembered by. I want to be remembered for being a good mom. I want to be remembered for making an impact in music, and for just having some awesome fashion. You know what I mean? You want to go out looking awesome.
Yeah. And speaking of that, we have about 15 more minutes left in the broadcast. But speaking of fashion, y'all, if you're not following Heather on Instagram, you're missing out. Her details are in the caption of this broadcast, so please follow her. I mean, she's amazing. When I said at the beginning, she's the creator of all things beautiful. Trust me, she is. But speaking of fashion, tell us a little bit about the merchandise where people can buy it. I see the Shine t-shirt behind you. Talk about that, where they can get the album, where it's streaming. Let us know.
Yeah, so you can get the album anywhere online. Anywhere that you typically buy music online, you should be able to get it. So iTunes, you can stream on Spotify. Pandora should have it. You can also get it at DeseretBook.com. That's our distributor. This is what you'll look for. Obviously, it's up there. Now, we have T-shirts made because I am a mom and I'm in digital learning. And we just released an album. Right now, the shop is not open, but we're looking to have it open in the next week or two. We have all of the shirts already. Here's one example of a shirt. We have green and we have black as well. And then I have a full line of clothing as well. Prior to doing the music, I was working on Etsy and running a little online business. And so I really wanted to utilize Shine to sort of go more into streetwear and to create sort of an element of casual, comfortable streetwear for, urban families and moms out there. And so that's kind of the direction that I'm going with Shine. So next week, the week after, you should be able to purchase these online.
Wonderful. You can't have an album without merchandise, and certainly you can't have an album without a music video. I understand you're working on a music video now.
Yes. And so that is what I've been working on this past week. It's a lot because I really want it to be awesome, and I really want to bring my fashion. And so I want to rep ATL. Oh gosh, the music and the people and the fashion. I love it all. Like I went to Cumberland today and it was just like, oh, I just love it. I'm just so inspired all the time. Oh, it's just awesome. So I
look, Heather, you haven't found this in California more than likely. I mean, you might have, but not like this.
Yeah. So we're working on the music video. Hopefully we'll have that done in the next month, it's no easy undertaking. So that is in the works right now.
In the works right now. Well, we'll certainly keep a lookout, following your feed. Tell us where we can find you online, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Sure. You can find me at Earthy Churchy Girl online. It's spelled with a U, and it's spelled very incorrectly all the way across. So the worst way that you can spell it, that is me. It's like one of these things where it's like you make your name and then you realize, oh man, this is like stuck with me for life. So there we are, right up here, Earthy Churchy Girl, or Shine Music 2020, because Shine is taken and so is Shine Music and so is everything. So Shine Music 2020, that's where you can find us online. And I'm also under Earthy Churchy at TikTok. I love TikTok.
Y'all, listen, Heather, I don't mean to interrupt you, but y'all, she was retweeted by Jermaine, I guess it's retweet or re-Instagram or whatever the language is. Jermaine Dupree, he's a big time producer in Atlanta. He retweeted her.
And it had to be on one of these bad hair days. It had to be when I had blue hair, of course, that he retweets. It's okay. I'll take it. I will take it. Thank you. Thank you, Jermaine Dupree.
And who knows, Heather, we put it out there. You just might have an opportunity to work with them. The sky.
You can be in our video too. You can be in the Shine video if you want
to be. Look, Heather. Look, I am in the vulnerable population for COVID, so I might have to take a back seat for that. I'll watch the video though.
Okay, hey.
And Heather, as we close out this interview, I want to know two things. Let me just, because I have a whole list of questions. I just think we have all night to interview, but unfortunately we don't. But let's see. Hold on. Let's talk about what shine means to you. How do you shine?
I mean, I think that we all shine in our own way. I think what's awesome about shining is that you get to just be who you are. Today I was thinking in my mind, I am no longer in the business of trying to convince you to like me, because I can like me and I can be fine with me. And when you like yourself, then that just goes out into the world. And I love unique people. I love imperfection. I love flaws. I love things. If you decide to follow me on Instagram, you will see that I show up all kind of ways, And some days people probably wish I would put on some makeup, but I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with me. And I think that is how people shine, and I think that's how the Lord intends us to be, with our imperfections and everything. So I think just coming as you are is how you can shine.
Oh, that's beautiful, Heather, and that's a beautiful way to close out this interview. Being who you are, coming as you are, because at the end of the day, the Lord loves us all. Makeup, fashionable or not, He loves us as we are. Yeah. So Heather, just thank you so much for finding the courage, finding the energy, the wherewithal to listen and to act, because now we have this wonderful product called Shine, the album. And you guys certainly stream it online, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your music. You won't be disappointed. I can guarantee you that. Heather, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. And keep shining, girl. Keep shining.
Yes, and you too, sister.
Thank you, Heather. And y'all, the Shine Train will continue to chug right along next weekend. Well, I'll be joined by the queen herself of Shine, Miss Avery Sunshine, y'all. She'll be here with her partner, her friend in music, her partner in marriage, Dana Johnson. It's going to be a great show. Make sure you tune in 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. I get that so confused sometimes. 6 Central. So 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, right here on Facebook. Remember, like the page, share this broadcast with your friends, and tell them to do the same, because y'all, this programming that's coming up for the rest of the year is amazing. You won't want to miss it. And with that, thank you for watching. And in all of your doing, friends, make sure you show a little kindness, extend a little grace, and be gentle with yourself. Thanks so much for watching. Good night.